This is the Begin Within podcast, where we believe real, lasting health and fitness requires you to start inside before you work out. I'm your host, Nate Slegger, and I'm here to show you behind the scenes of fitness. You already know exercise is good for you, but what about all the other things in life that affect your fitness? If you're looking for extra motivation to get started or to make sure you keep going, this is the place for you.
Produced by BeginWithin.fit.
Improving health is about so much more than just losing weight. But I realize weight loss might be the goal that brought you here to the Begin Within podcast. That's why I wrote my latest book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, to reveal the 5 areas that I see are most overlooked by the people that I work with who want to lose weight. Each one of the chapters in this free ebook describes that specific area that you need to focus on to improve your health and get great permanent results. And it also links back here to episodes of the podcast where we've had experts on the show talking about that specific area. So you can benefit from those previous episodes while you're learning about how to maximize the results that you're after. You can get your free copy of my ebook, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss, by going to beginwithin.fit/ebook or going to the link in the show notes. Now is a great time to do a little multitasking while you're listening to the start of this episode. Head over to grab your free copy of my book, 5 Ways to Stop Wrecking Weight Loss. If you missed the URL, here it is again, beginwithin.fit/ebook, or there is a link in the show notes for you. Grab your copy, and now let's get on with today's episode. My guest today is Lisa Franz. She is a nutrition coach and the host of the Nutrition and Life podcast. A few things that we are going to talk about today is how to bring joy into this process of using nutrition adjustments, changes, focusing on nutrition choices in order to improve health and get the results that we want. How to bring joy into that process, a process that can feel so overwhelming, so heavy. We're going to talk about that. She's going to share her perspective on how to make that process more enjoyable. I know you're going to enjoy that. A couple of other things that we're going to talk about is the concept of practicing when it comes to trying out new approaches, deviating from what we're used to, from our current routines and things like that. And we're also going to talk about this idea, at least in concept. It's definitely been in our previous episodes, although I don't think that we've shared the exact quote before, but it is something that I have shared with clients over the years and even with members of our team. And it's the concept of structure equals freedom. For some, that's a difficult concept to grasp, how having more structure actually gives you more freedom, but we are going to talk about that, especially as it applies to nutrition. Here is my interview with Lisa Franz.
I'm a nutrition coach. I'm the owner and operator of Nutrition Coaching and Life, and we have a podcast which is called the Nutrition and Life Podcast. And as the name sort of says, I mostly help people with their nutrition, but it also entails an active lifestyle and, more importantly, also addressing habits, routines, mindset blocks, etc. The reason how I got into this started pretty simple initially. I did my bachelor's in exercise science and then later on master's exercise science and health promotion and nutrition, but I didn't really know what to do with this degree at first. So I actually switched careers and got into policing for a little while.
Okay.
But throughout all of that, I realized just how important health really was, because mine was deteriorating throughout shift work and, of course, the high stress demands of police work as well. And actually also while I was in the police, I was always thinking about my training. I was thinking about nutrition, and literally just realized that that is my passion and I want to go back to that. So I transitioned back into nutrition coaching and then started my own company just a couple of years ago. And why that is my passion is because I truly believe that it helps people enhance their quality of life, not just the quantity of life. We all know, okay, leading a healthy life helps you live longer and also a little bit better. But I truly think nutrition or food in general can bring so much joy to someone's life. Like I get so much pleasure out of not just obviously a great meal. Most people get pleasure out of that, but the whole concept of thinking about what you might want to eat, or also just the cultural aspects of it. And as we have chatted a little bit before recording, I guess, I travel a lot, and so exploring different cultural aspects of nutrition is incredible to me. It's also history, it's emotion, it's everything, and everyone has to eat. It's not something that is optional.
Right.
Everyone has to deal with food. And so I think when we can find a way to make food work for us, in the sense of it not being a stressor, but something that brings more pleasure to us, and that enhances how we feel, how we go about our days, our relationship, our energy levels, our performance in the work, in work, how we interact with each other. I think that that is absolute key. And so a lot of my strategies, or our strategies, seem to be quite aligned with what you are talking about in your podcast or philosophy as well, in the sense of keeping things simple. And
Yeah.
nonetheless, those simple things are so important. They really make up, if you are able to get into a good routine with those simple basics, they make up, let's say, 80% of your health. If you are able to manage your overall calories, you're not eating way too little, you're not eating way too much, you're not going from one end to the other all the time, but you're kind of in your sweet spot. If you are managing your activity well enough, you get your steps in, you're working out, let's say 3 times a week or so, you're in a sweet spot. You're consistently sleeping a decent amount, you're in a sweet spot. You're eating enough protein and vegetables, you're in your sweet spot. That doesn't mean you can't drink a little bit of wine from time to time, or you can have a couple of weeks where you're not exercising at all because you're on vacation, or truly that to me means balance. And that's what that whole 80-20 philosophy comes down to. I think a lot of people still misunderstand it, though, because they either take it too literally, or they really still don't hit those basics and think, if I'm eating quote unquote well 3 days of the week, and then the other 4 days of the week they do whatever, that's not 80% people. We still kind of need to actually hit that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, that's really the foundation of the philosophy, I guess.
Nice. Nice. I like that. I like when you said that you find a lot of joy in thinking about nutrition and food. I feel like many of the people that when I first start talking to individuals who are looking for some help, a lot of times the thoughts about food are not joyful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe part of the journey is, I do think that we all think about food quite a bit. What, in your opinion, is helpful in changing the way those thoughts feel for us, like turning them from like the overwhelming, like burdensome food thinking into more joyful, like this is something I really enjoy focusing on? What does it take to make that switch?
That's such a great question, and I should backpedal to say that the reason I now find so much freedom and joy with food is because before that I found it so restrictive, and I always thought, this is bad, I can't eat that, you shouldn't eat that, this is too much, you need to eat less, and so on. And because I was going through various different diets, and also because I didn't know any better. And so then learning more about food, realizing that it really does come down. I'm very much a numbers person, and so
Okay.
the whole concept of calories in, calories out just made sense to me, as opposed to that whole dogma of like, you can't eat this, or carbs after whatever time of the day, or this kind of restrictive feeling made me it took that joy and that liberty away from me. So then realizing that in the end, moderation and balance really is the key, and allows me to travel, allows me to go to a birthday party, allows me to, without feeling guilty, or without afterwards thinking I need to get quote unquote back on track, or that was a mess up this weekend, now I need to over restrict during the week. And so that would be part number one, realizing that no food item per se, unless you're allergic to it or it is not actually meant for eating, is bad. Everything is just calories in the end. And yes, of course, there are certain things we should be eating more of because they are more nutritious, and certain things that we probably should be eating less of because they're more calorie dense. We tend to overeat more on them. But simply having that permission and veering away from that whole all or nothing thinking was incredibly liberating for me, and has worked really well for a lot of my clients. And sometimes they're actually surprised when I say, hey, I want you to implement once or twice a week something that you currently or used to think is off limits. I want you to have a little piece of brownie, and just practicing also to have a little piece of it, because otherwise, if we are in that mindset of I can't have that, but today I'm making an exception, so I'm going to go all out and I need to have half of the cake because after that I'm not allowed anymore. And so by practicing having small quantities of certain things, I think we can slowly steer away from something being bad, and also realizing, oh, okay, I just had maybe a tiny serving of rice, and then next day you step on the scale and whoa, big surprise, you're not actually 10 pounds heavier. Okay, maybe that over time will reinforce in your brain that that food isn't actually that bad, that carbs are not the devil, or whatever food you think might be bad.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, that would be step number one, in my opinion, learning to have everything that you want in moderation.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. Takes a lot of the pressure off trying to be
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Yes.
Is there, I know you mentioned that step one, is there anything else that helps with that transition from like overwhelm when it comes to food thoughts into having more joy and more
Yeah,
freedom,
absolutely.
or, that free feeling when it comes to food choices?
Definitely. I think, or one thing that I often hear is, I would like to be able to think about food less. I feel like it's consuming too much of my thoughts.
Hmm.
And what, in my opinion, can help with that is bringing more structure into your eating. And while that
Okay.
sounds like more restriction, as well as planning, that also sounds like more restriction. Structure, in my opinion and experience, equals freedom. I know that's like a bit of a saying, but I truly think that that is true when it comes to don't overcomplicate things. Maybe find 2 or 3 breakfast options that work for you, are of a decent size, they're good for your energy levels, and stick with those. You don't need to get up every single day recontemplating what you might want to have for breakfast or what you shouldn't have, and then you don't really know, and then you stop at the drive-through or you grab something else. If you just have a little bit of preparation and planning in your mind and you stick with those couple of things, that can help a lot. And same with your lunch, anticipating lunch is going to come around today, so I probably should take something to the office with me unless I want to eat out, and not just turning up and then it's 12:30 and you're like, oh, I'm starving, what should I have?
Okay.
And I feel like that's when the overwhelm comes in, and oftentimes you might make worse decision, especially if it comes from a state of already low blood sugar and you're hitting that hangry state, or or it's kind of like, oh, I only have 15 minutes, and then you're just grabbing something. So a little bit of foresight, structure actually takes away so much of the thinking, and also the the negative feelings afterwards and that overwhelm afterwards. That would
Nice.
be the second one, and not to overcomplicate things. Just there's really nothing wrong with a little bit of repetition. I think we have heard almost too much. You need to have variety in your food, and yeah, that might pertain very well to like a bit of variety with vegetables or with fruit for gut health particularly. But generally speaking, staple meals are awesome. They make life easy and take a lot of that obsessive thinking away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've read that before, that a lot of people that can control their health, have more control over their body weight, that they tend to eat the same things, which sometimes I think we feel like is boring, but it's just decisions that get made more easily. Yeah, we're making
Definitely.
decisions ahead of time, kind of like you said, rather than in the moment when they start to feel very weighty, very oppressive. If we can make them ahead, and it makes for structure, then yeah.
Yeah, and as much as I said earlier that food is joy and culture
Mm-hmm.
and social aspect, etc., also realizing that not every meal needs to be the most delicious meal. Not every meal needs to be that indulgent experience, and just being
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, if I have those staple meals, um 7 or 8 times out of 10, that is absolutely fine. And that, or maybe even less, and that allows me to maybe keep my dinner a little bit more flexible. If for my breakfast, lunch, and my snacks I have the same things, and then I can keep a bit more variety for my dinner, or it allows me to have a bit more freedom on the weekend. So still, again, bringing that mixture in, but having that base of like, this is where I'm covering my micronutrients, my protein, etc., and then therefore I have more freedom later on in the day or later on in the week. And that's when I take the time. I might sit down for like an hour or two and chat with people at the same time, and really enjoy food for what it is during that time. But not literally every meal needs to be like, oh, what am
Mm-hmm.
I craving right now? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we can't always trust our cravings.
Interesting. I've noticed that too, as I'm working with people. A lot of times it's like, well, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. And I like that point that you made of not every time we eat has to be this like, heavenly experience, that it just satisfies our taste buds to the max, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we have to be kind of in between a few camps, because there's I'm gonna call it quote unquote bodybuilder camp, where they're just like, food is just fuel. I can eat chicken, broccoli, and rice for every meal for the rest of my life. And then you have the other people that are like, oh, I want to feel what I'm eating right now, and I need to listen to my intuition, and I didn't crave that, and blah blah blah. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can have, again, you can, when it's busy, when you're just in between meetings anyway, or whatever, or you're on the way to work, this doesn't have to be your intuition meal. This can just be your broccoli, chicken, and rice meal. But then on the other hand, when you're actually in the emotional state as well, where you're receptive to it and you might have time to relax, then listen a little bit more to your body and see
Mhm.
what you're actually craving.
I like that. I like kind of being flexible and almost being able to step into those different mindsets. Yeah, I know. Man, back in the day, my wife and I joke about it all the time. Like I used to take, the Tupperware of the
Mhm.
like dry, gross chicken breast. Like I didn't care. I was like, it's fine. Like it's food, and the broccoli and just what you described. And it was, now I think about like, oh, that was just kind of repulsive. And I was cooking in plastic containers, and it was just whatever needed to be done, get the job done.
Yeah,
But
that's it.
um it reminded me of something you said earlier, that if we could just go back to for a minute, use the word like practicing.
Mhm.
um and I can't remember the context where it popped up, but you talked about how you encourage clients to just practice, just like try this on, kind of, and see what happens. What
That's right.
what role do you feel like that has in being successful in the whole process of improving health through
For
nutrition?
sure. I think it was in the context of practicing to have like a little piece of brownie here and there
Yes.
or whatever,
Yes.
something like that. So absolutely practicing here, I think, is the right verb, because everyone has to find out what works for them. There are certain people that, especially initially in the habit change process, they do better with abstaining for a while anyway, until we maybe reintroduce certain quote unquote trigger foods or whatever. And then there are other people that they can't even bear the thought of not having a couple of pieces of chocolate in one day. So for those people, it would be obviously incorporating that on a more regular occurrence. But then also when it comes to just literally anything such as meal timing, meal frequency, etc., all of that needs to be individualized. And oftentimes we think something doesn't work for us because we're currently so in our routine, and anything out of the routine feels uncomfortable because it's change feels uncomfortable. But then simply saying, hey, okay, just because you're only eating 2 meals per day, is that because you have heard intermittent fasting is good for you, or is that because it truly is? Do you know if you might actually feel a little bit more stable if you had a snack in the afternoon? I don't know, I never tried it. Okay, well, let's give that a go. Or have you ever tried, like simply coming from that perspective of what's the worst thing that can happen? You might not feel that great for a day, but then, okay, let's move on. We saw that didn't really work that well for you, and vice versa. But yeah, I know we're also in like our, not necessarily stuck, but we're just in our comfort zones, even when it comes to little things like meal frequency or timing, that often we are shy to try something new. And so I think when it comes to trying certain things, why not? That's always my strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you want a different result, you have to try something different, right? Like we have to be willing to, well, this routine, this way of doing it got us here. If we want to move forward, we've got to do something different. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I like that practice, just to see what happens, just try it out, and let's see how it fits, how it feels, and how it works. So cool. What Lisa, what's the best way for people to connect with you, to follow your work? I know you mentioned the
Absolutely.
podcast. Tell us about.
Yeah. So I'm most active, or try to put out some helpful content on Instagram. The handle there is Nutrition Coaching and Life, just like the company name. That's also the website. And the podcast is just Nutrition and Life.
Okay. Awesome. Lisa Franz, thank you so much for being here on the show.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. I hope we can do it again sometime.
I want to thank Lisa so much for being here with us on the show, and I have links for you in the show notes to get over to her website so that you can connect with her and follow her work. If you would love to, please do. I did a quick Google search before I hopped on to record the outro here of the podcast, and what kept coming up for me again and again regarding how much do we think about food, how many food decisions do we make in a day? Over 200 food-related decisions that we make each and every day. And so that can definitely feel overwhelming. It can feel like, especially when we're trying to be perfect, we're trying to fit into a box, we're trying to stick to a restrictive diet or a method of eating, it can feel overwhelming. It really can. It can feel very burdensome. Some 200 decisions every single day related to food. Well, how do we break free from that? How do we find more joy and feel less overwhelmed? Well, the answer we talked about in the interview is to have more structure, to have a definite structure to our process when it comes to nutrition decisions that we're making as many decisions ahead of time as we can, making as many decisions repeatable as possible so we don't have to make those decisions again, having perhaps a certain time of the week, a certain day of the week where we can sit down and make some of those, take some of those 200 decisions that we might make that day regarding food and use them to make decisions for the rest of the week. Food prep, food plan, I know for myself, when I've been most successful, when I feel the best, and Amanda and I talk about this a lot because it's true for both of us, it's when we have food already prepared. The times when we do best and we feel best is when we have stuff ready. So when one meal is being made, why not make 2 or 3 different meals? So is that something that you'd be willing to do in order to move forward? And of course, I want to say that this does not apply to any who are listening who feel like their thoughts about food are definitely beyond healthy, right? Please get some help to support you in having some healthier thoughts around food. But for those who have non-disordered, thinking around food, this can be a big step forward, is just to add some more structure. So please take a look at, your routine, or even if you feel like you don't have one, look at your schedule and find where in your regular routine you can either plunk some time where you can build some structure in, or perhaps plan ahead to put some structure into, just the ebb and the flow of the day-to-day. Does that make sense? Either, set aside some time, say like for me, Sunday evening, right? That makes a lot of sense to say, all right, I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to put it in my calendar, 30 minutes, 60 minutes to put some thought into what the week is going to look like nutritionally, right? Either do that or give some thought to like just the ebb and the flow of the days, right? Like Lisa mentioned, are there certain things that I typically would have for breakfast when I am eating the way that I would like, right? And have those things already planned ahead, right? Or lunch, dinner, etc. Having some ideas ahead of what type of structure you can add in to the regular routine. And just take one small step forward, right? We love the baby steps. So just try one thing, practice it, give it a try, and see what happens, and see how you move toward a healthier place. I want to thank you so much for listening to the Begin Within Health Show and for being here with me. Please take a screenshot of yourself listening to the episode, post it to your stories, tag me so that I can high five you, and I will talk to you again very soon here on the Begin Within Health Show.